Hi, this is Howard Cooper, and before we jump into this podcast interview, I just wanted to share that I've been lucky enough over the last couple of years to have interviewed a bunch of other leading therapists and agents of change, really exploring their take on everything rapid change related. What you're about to see was recorded a little while ago, but it still holds tremendous value if you're someone that wants to learn about how to help people make quick behavioural shifts. So I hope you enjoy, and to make sure you don't miss any of the new releases, then take action and click that subscribe button, and then you'll be kept in the loop when any new episodes come out. Welcome to the Rapid Change Matters podcast. My name is Howard Cooper, and for over 14 years now, I've been fascinated with helping people to create personal change quickly. But I still come across many who believe that lasting personal change has to take a long time, consisting of reliving traumas or deep psychological analysis, or simply that flawed notion that understanding why you have a problem will somehow make it go away. I'm on a mission to get people who work therapeutically with others to shift their thinking and realise that these beliefs are not written in stone. Rapid change can happen. So, to help you open up to what's possible, I'm interviewing top therapists and agents of change who are out there getting real results with real people really quickly. Before we get to the interview, I just wanted to let you know that I've written a quick-to-read, downloadable PDF on 5 strategies to amplify your client's response, with some great tips on getting your therapeutic suggestions to really sizzle. You can download this for free from rapidchange.works, where you can also find all the information about this episode and episodes still to come. Now, over to the interview. It's with a smile that I'm excited to introduce today's guest to the podcast. He's not only a highly respected hypnotist and performance expert, but has other career highlights as a sportsman, being world champion 13 times in kickboxing, Thai boxing and sport jiu-jitsu. He's the author of the book No Worries, which shows people practical steps of how they can rid themselves of nerves, anxiety and stress. And for those of us who follow our guest today on Facebook, you will know that this is someone who doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. Or, even dare I say, runs the run. Welcome to the podcast, Gary Smiler Turner.
Howard, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all mine. But let's jump straight in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got started.
Cool, yeah. Well, basically, I've been a sportsman most of my life. I was a professional for nearly 20 years, and I've always had a lifelong interest in psychology, because the people I was beating, generally it wouldn't be through physical ability or technical ability, it'll be through applied psychology. And it just kind of led to me being a hypnotherapist, a change worker amongst my performance expert work. So I work as a performance expert. I deliver behavioural change to people in my hypnotherapy. I deliver behavioural change to people in personal training, generally concentrating on fight sports clients, and also with teams, organisations, corporations, the same thing. I work with behavioural change basically. I got into it because I could, basically. It was an interest of mine, and someone once said to me that you never work a day in your life if you enjoy it, and I enjoy my work. I just happen to get paid for fun, basically.
Now, so I'm really fascinated to talk to you about an awful lot of stuff, but one of the things, as an ex-sportsman within the world of fighting, how has some of the tools and techniques that you know about directly helped you, in the ring or in a combative situation?
Well, the first thing is everything happens non-consciously. Conscious thought follows on after the non-conscious action has already started. So, for example, I get my fighters in training to easily, effortlessly, non-consciously do the right thing at the right time, the right way for the right effect, or in other words, mindless violence. I get them to just allow their training to happen automatically. Stimulus response. We built up such a stimulus response set that when an opponent moves in a certain way, they have the answer for it, and it just happens automatically. So when I'm working with clients and when I'm working with myself, it's all about deliberate practice to make sure you've got the right responses to a stimulus, and that's mental as well as physical, of course.
It's interesting you use the word non-conscious, because obviously I speak to
Yeah.
a lot of people within hypnotherapy, NLP, solution-focused work, and there's a vast array of terms that people use for this thing that we deem the unconscious or the non-conscious or the subconscious. So why is it that you use the word non-conscious, and how did you arrive at that?
I use the word non-conscious because it's the more scientific term. For me, unconscious is when I've hit someone with an overhand right and they're laying out cold on the canvas. Subconscious quite often will come with more spiritual overtones for certain people. But the subconscious kind of means below, unconscious, under, and neither of which are really, in the world of cognitive science, scientific terms. Non-conscious is just basically everything that's not conscious. So everything that's outside of conscious awareness is non-conscious. And if you study the leading emotional researchers' work, people like Ledoux, Damasio, Panksepp, even Paul Ekman, they will tend to use the term non-conscious rather than unconscious or subconscious to keep it more within the cognitive science field. And I follow suit with that.
So am I right going back to what you were saying about the stimulus response? That certainly if you're working with fighters, you're doing stimulus response physically to prepare them non-consciously, but then you also use your hypnotherapy or hypnotherapeutic approach to be able to train their non-conscious mind in the stimulus response, and it's those two
That's right.
aspects.
Yeah, I mean, if you can think of consciousness, conscious awareness, like being a rationalization, a commentary on what we've already decided to do non-consciously first, or at least has been initiated non-consciously first. It's we cannot not work with the non-conscious. I mean, right now what you're seeing is 1/1000th of a second behind reality. It's the bottom-up incoming information mixing with the top-down information of everything you know about the images, combining then to form on the visuospatial sketchpad your imagined version of that reality. That's all non-conscious first. So even the receiving of a stimulus is happening non-consciously. The whole process of perception is non-conscious first, long before we even get the conscious awareness of it. So we cannot not be working with the non-conscious at any time.
So it's fascinating to me because we talk about non-conscious and this idea that we're priming ourselves for some other thing to almost have a control over our actions. And then obviously I've noticed on your website, Gary, you have an interesting statement about hypnosis being,
Right.
I would argue, that not all hypnotherapists would ascribe to, which is this idea that one can use hypnosis to control someone. So I
It's
was wondering how you arrived at that conclusion, and what your thoughts about that are. If anyone's sitting there thinking, "Oh, it is mind control. Oh my word, how can you say that?"
mind control. I would say it's more mind influence. For example, if I say, whatever you do right now, don't think of me wearing a pink tutu, as you're looking at me on the
Oh,
over
Gary,
Skype
how
at the
could you
moment.
do that?
Oh, well, I like to ruin people's days, but luckily I'm not in a pink tutu because it's not Sunday. I'll leave that with the heels and ready for Sunday. But if you're receiving a word, if I make the sound cat, for example, you're now ascribing meaning to that sound cat. It might be a black lying 3-year-old cat or whatever, and it's firing memory traces in your neurology. And if you receive the word, you cannot not have those memory traces firing. So even spoken words, spoken communication, cognitive linguistics, was it? I can't remember what the book's called now. Is it Louder Than Words by Bergen, for example? Great book on cognitive linguistics. I recommend everyone in hypnosis gets it. Explains quite nicely how language is received and processed by the human mind. If there's a motor action involved, the motor cortex will fire up with that motor action. There's an inhibition on it that will stop it coming to the final motor movement itself and the motor neurons. Yet, if you're thinking about a movement, you can't move that limb or that body part because there'll be a motor cortex sort of confusion taking place. It can only hold one movement in mind at once. So the thoughts, when you have a thought, it fires throughout the entire neurology, the brain, spinal cord, peripheral nervous system, all the way through to the motor neurons, with that inhibition on there. So you can influence people's movement just by influencing their thoughts. You can influence their thoughts through words. And if it's being received, you cannot not influence them. Therefore, you cannot not have an element of control over them. As a demonstration, I've regularly stuck people's feet to the floor while I've been sparring them during the sparring session. They definitely don't want to have their feet stuck to the floor when I'm hitting them. Yeah, it's, I have influenced them enough to control their behavior. And that's what we do. And it's not just through hypnosis that we do that. It's just any interaction is controlling other people. Just think of your mother's tone of voice, for example. She gives you the tone of voice and she's controlled your behavior. So we cannot not get away from the fact that hypnosis, like any interaction, any communication, is controlling other people.
How would you reassure someone who came and said, "Well, hang on, I'm really anxious about this hypnosis thing because, I like to be in control"?
I reframe it and say, "Good." Be afraid. It is that powerful. I use it. I'll get hold of it and I'll grab it and run with it and make a bit of fun out of it as well. What I do is reassure them because I'm giving them back control. And the way that I work in my sessions is to give them control, is to teach them what I'm doing as I'm doing it, so they can stand on their own 2 feet. Besides, say for example, it always cracks me up when hypnotherapists will say someone can't be made to do something against their will. Say, for example, someone comes in for stop smoking. At some level, they want to smoke, otherwise they wouldn't come in to see you. Therefore, if we can't change their will, how can we make them stop smoking? So I'll use that we can actually control people, we can influence them, but I'll put it in a scientific framework at a level that's appropriate for my clients. If I've got a neurologist in, I'll be talking on the neurology level. If I've got a 5-year-old in, I might actually dumb it down a little bit to make sure the 5-year-old can understand it. But I talk in scientific, evidence-based way. I find it much more beneficial. But yeah, I'm giving control back. There seems to be this kind of impression that hypnosis is a thing. It's a lot of people believe in a state model of hypnosis when there's just no evidence for that, where I will tell you what you will do and you will do it as an automaton. That kind of control. I don't see control like that. I see control as influencing behavior, guiding behavior, and not everyone has the right conditioning, the right learning to be able to just say, not now, but in a moment, say 1, 2, and click my fingers and you'll dance like a chicken. It doesn't always happen like that. You might have to do a lot of conditioning to get to that stage. But we cannot not get away from the fact that every communication is influence. Every communication is controlling behavior. Because if that communication is received, it cannot not influence that behavior. It cannot not control it.
So how do you go about creating conditions for people to become more responsive to hypnosis?
I very rarely actually do what people would term classical hypnosis. My working definition of hypnosis is hypnosis is where your imagination is guided so much that it becomes your reality with a sense of non-volition. And that's a general all-encompassing that I find is a nice working model that fits down and breaks down any hypnotic application. Because some people will say that hypnosis is, you see the hypnotherapist websites, and it's like hypnosis is a lovely state of relaxation. Well, when I'm sticking someone's feet to the floor when I'm fighting them, they're definitely not relaxed. In fact, they're generally freaking out. So it blows it out of the water. I'm just guiding their imagination so much that they're believing their feet are stuck. As they're believing it, the body's responding in kind, and therefore they're behaving, how they're moving, or lack of movement through the environment, how they're moving through space and time is influenced as a result. So it's just that, I don't work in the classical way very often. I go straight to phenomena. I cut out the irrelevant stuff. I serve my client best by not wasting time and going straight to phenomena. And phenomena is helping them imagine being the person they want to be, so much so that they are that person. So Oh, I'll have imaginary dogs running around the room, fairies off my mantelpiece flying around the room, pulling moonies to make them laugh when they have a negative thought. I'll have hands stuck to things, horns growing out of parents' head for kids. I'll be creating as much phenomena as I can in sessions, making the sessions fun, because why does therapy have to be boring? Let's make it fun and entertaining. While we're going about the therapeutic change, we're getting them to actually imagine being the person that they need to be so they can change their behavior and be that person.
It's so interesting talking to you about some of these ideas, especially because I think for people that may come from a traditional background or more traditional therapeutic approaches, some of these ideas might be in conflict with some of these things. The idea of having fairies running around and getting them to imagine horns on parents might fly in the face of stuff. What are the sort of reactions from other traditional therapists have you had when you've talked about this kind of stuff?
I find it quite funny because there seems to be generally there's some people like me who use lots of phenomena in sessions, and some people can't see how it's used. I use a lot of humor in my sessions. I make things a lot of fun. So, for example, but because I work to understand the structure of how I'm working behind it on the cognitive level, the physiological level, I look to understand the workings of it so I can be artful with the application of science. When I create phenomena, it's not just creating phenomena just for phenomena's sake. It's for a specific purpose.
Just in case anyone's not familiar with what you mean by phenomena, I suppose we're talking about hypnotic phenomena, things like negative hallucinations, positive hallucinations, kinesthetic experiences of hands being stuck.
You got it. Those, but to add to that, also phenomena in the way that they think, act, and behave.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because if it's in hypnotherapy, it'll be a therapeutic aim that we're going for. So that phenomenon will also be changing their thoughts. Where, for example, they used to think of a past trauma and freak. Now they think of a past trauma, understand that it's behind them. They're quite okay with the fact it's happened, and now they're looking forward to moving on with their lives and being the person they want to be. That's a phenomena as well. We've changed their imagined version. It takes me back to false memory syndrome, which there's certain membership bodies, shall we say, who have various ethics where you shall not create a false memory. But everything we do is creating false memories. We get them to imagine the past different. So when they recall it, it's changed. We get them to imagine a future memory different, a prospective memory different, in which case we've changed, we've created false memories. We cannot not influence someone without creating false memories. But phenomena is all about creating change, changing that person, changing their behavior. So when I'm mentioning phenomena, yeah, we've got all the classical side of the classical hypnotic phenomena, but also it's the way the client thinks, acts, and behaves I describe as phenomena as well. So if I'm creating a positive hallucination, which, to be honest, I find the easiest and simplest hypnotic phenomena to produce, humans being visual people, we rely on the visual perception as a primary sense. Therefore, it makes sense that it should be the easiest to actually produce. So without a classical induction, I'll go straight to creating a positive hallucination quite early on in a session. In doing so, I then teach them how they perceive the world, how what they're experiencing in the world is not the same as reality. Reality is there, but it's their imagined version of that reality. So, for example, I might say, if a spider ran out across the table right now, I might be going, cool, spider, right on time, better trained than my huskies, awesome, right on cue, you're spider, you're so cool. You, my client, might be going, oh my God, it's going to run across my face like that time when I was 3. I start freaking out because it's a spider. So the reality is, the spider's the spider. Everything else that we're experiencing on top of that is our imagined version of that. So I'll create hypnotic phenomena to highlight the fact that perception is not reality. It's a subjective experience of that reality. And in doing so, you can kind of like reveal the matrix to them. Reality's around them, but something how they're moving through it. what they're actually experiencing. It may be their reality, but it's the imagined version of the reality around them.
Absolutely. There is no spoon.
Yeah.
Indeed. Gary, I notice obviously that there is a large proportion of your work that is a focus on evidence-based cognitive based techniques. Would you say the growing trend for solely evidence-based techniques preclude being open to anecdotal evidence?
Not in the slightest. After all, the scientific process starts with an observation. Um, Anecdotes, a lot of my work is anecdotally based, but that doesn't prevent me from working out what the actual cause of that result is, for example. So you can refine it far better. I work with people like Craig Galvin all the time, where I chuck some ideas to Craig, and we can see how minimal we can how, what on the reductionist level, what's actually required, what can we leave out, what's not actually necessary to get the same change. And then once you've got the bare bones of the minimum things necessary to get the result, then you can just expand it according to the client application that you have, whatever that client needs. But you know the core structure of the process behind it. So it all starts with anecdote. It cannot not. My problem with therapists relying on anecdote is when they have explanations for it that don't have evidence.
So rather
And
than just saying, well, hey,
that's what
this is an
frustrates me.
anecdote, and it's useful in following where that leads me and what to look at, they kind of just go,
Completely.
well, no, it just must be true.
That's right. We're humans. We all fall foul of cognitive bias. My Facebook post, I've got a team of 6 people with various fields who double check everything that I put on Facebook to let me know where I've fallen foul of cognitive bias,
Hmm.
because we all have it. Um, there's if you look at my posts, every now and again there'll be little edits appearing, and it's because I've cocked up,
Okay.
because I'm within my biased view. And I know Jules A. Lalonde, brilliant fella from Canada, he may pick up and say, Gary, have you actually seen what you've written here? It may not actually read how you're thinking. Something like that. He's picked up on it. Oh, bugger. I've got my own, primed perception here. I've completely cocked up. Thanks, mate. Or I've misrepresented something and taken it out of context. It's I've got people like that who check my post for me, and where I've fallen foul of cognitive bias, they pick me up on it, and I look forward to that. Ray Cronise, the former NASA scientist, he's taught me it look forward to being wrong is when you learn the most.
So I think that's a
So,
real message that a lot of people will give you and will say, but it's not everyone actually lives and breathes.
oh, it's a great friend of mine, Richard Frisson. He always says you should never invest in your beliefs so much that they can't change with new evidence. You
I
know,
like that.
and so many people getting trained in. I mean, it's rife within the change work field, hypnotherapy, NLP, and sort of the surrounding little professions and industries, where people invest in a product so much that when the evidence behind it is falsified, they don't change because they've invested so heavily in their product. When products should develop, they should change. They should evolve. I love the fact that Adam Eason slates his earlier work because he's now developed, and he's like, yeah, I can't believe at the UK Hypnosis Convention they were selling my old book. It's so out of date. I hate it. They need to get my new book on there to sell,
Well, on
because
Adam's podcast, we spoke about exactly about that and about how interesting it was that
right,
he was able to do, a 180-degree turn on something that he'd written about when a lot of people, I think, if they invest a lot of time and energy in something, they will hold more dearly onto it. And it's quite
yeah, yeah.
admirable to be able to go, yeah, that was just wrong.
Do you know how freeing it is to do that, though? I mean, for example, in nutrition, a few years ago, I was massively high fat, saturated fat's not bad. Everyone's got it wrong. Until I was led by a nutrition lecturer friend of mine to actually look at the overall body of science, and realise that if you look at epidemiological studies, There is no evidence that shows that on the face of it that shows that saturated fat has issues. But then when you look at the actual data hidden within and the intervention studies, you start realizing actually the advice to cut back on saturated fat, in particular from animal products, is absolutely on point. Hence why the UK food guidance is what it is. I had to do, I was delivering workshops on it. I was delivering performance workshops, performance nutrition workshops. I had to do, again, a complete 180 on what I was teaching because I'd learned more. I always frame my workshops, and if I can frame it now for everyone here, I want everyone listening to question what I'm saying. Question it, try and find holes in it. And if you can find holes in it, especially if it can be supported by evidence, let me know, because I'm not right all the time. I get things wrong, and it's important for me to continue developing. So question everything, even this advice, and see where it leads. Because, you know, there's nothing worse than investing in something that's wrong too much.
That's really cool, really cool. Now tell me, on the rapid fire question round, you mentioned when I asked you, is there anything that you've subsequently believed and then you've done a U-turn about yourself? And your response was most of my NLP and hypnosis training. Tell us about what motivated that answer and what your thoughts were about it.
Well, I did my hypnosis training, and I realized quite quickly that there's some things that weren't resonating with me. It seems to be a lot of I'm teaching what my trainer taught me, and what my trainer taught me is fact. It almost becomes a little bit cult-like, where you follow the teachings without question. And I like to question. So when I started questioning what I've been taught, I kept finding things that didn't ring true. And that just led me down the cognitive side. NLP, I'm certified as a practitioner, master practitioner, and trainer level in NLP. Yeah, when you break down what you're taught, you find that most of it is inaccurate according to science. I mean, the classic 7% of communication is just the words. The classic Moravian study. When you actually research and find out where it came from, that Moravian study is taken completely out of context. Now, the intent of it is true. You need to check that that your tonality and your body language is congruent with how you're presenting it. You know, there's a body language element to it, a tonality element to communication. But to say that words are only 7% is completely incorrect. And the more you look into the teachings of NLP, the more you find that it's taught more in terms of a metaphor rather than accurate science. Not only that, lots of it has moved on. For example, transformational grammar kind of lost out in the great linguistic wars of the 80s to cognitive linguistics. I see like wizards firing words at each other without, like in a Star Wars kind of, you know, Gandalfy kind of, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi way. So things need to be developed. The Ericksonian language patterns, while it's fantastic being artfully vague, there's no real evidence that I'm aware of that shows it being more effective than basically just calling it how it is and saying it straight with a direct suggestion. I think Adam Easton will be able to elaborate far more on that. That's one of the fields that I believe he's looked into in a lot more detail. Yeah, it's just basically the more I questioned, the more I found not quite to be true. And I do it now. I investigate sort of new intervention approaches. And because I'm so up on physiology, because of my sports career, I have a look at a lot of the somatic approaches as well. And I love somatic approaches. I use touch, I use tapping, but I use the accurate, or as accurate as I can, physiological and cognitive basis for it, rather than the intangible way that it's oftenly presented. I love EFT, I love TFT for the practice. There's reasons, very strong cognitive reasons why you can tap just about anywhere and get the same result. And the same when if you tap a dummy with the person observing, or tap yourself, they'll start getting the result. There's cognitive reasons why. I like to understand the processes behind it. And I do get frustrated when trainers rely on scientific explanations to be which turned out to be completely unfounded. One of my frustrations was when I pointed out that the amygdala yes, it is involved in fear, but the amygdala is not involved in all emotions. So when you're saying you're depotentiating the amygdala in respect to this emotion, are you aware that the amygdala is not even firing up in that process at all? And therefore the explanation there isn't accurate. I like things to be done right.
Can you share with us a couple of examples, case studies, people that you've worked with who have come in, they've got something that feels, to all intents and purposes, like something that, oh, that was going to need a lot of stuff, and actually they've had some fairly swift turnarounds and transformations?
Yeah, change doesn't have to take time. Change happens really quick. I think too many people overcomplicate it. I was taught to take detailed personal histories. I very quickly found that it had no bearing on the sessions that I was ending up giving. Now when clients come in, I basically say, so what we're here for today? And listen to their answer. As I listen to their answer, I see their physiology, I see their reactions, I listen to their words, I listen to their pronoun usages, their identity markers. And very quickly, with very little information, I know how they're structuring their issue, how to structure their problem, and therefore we can be quite precise with how we're targeting our work. If you target the right intervention in the right way at the right time for the right effect, change can almost be instant. The art of the application of science is finding the right intervention and delivering it in the right way for the client at the right time for the right effect. That's the art, and that comes with experience. I had a miracle week once where it was almost like dead would rise, people could walk on water, and it was like, my God, I am God. Arise, move your arm once more. I can move it. Yes, that's right. Miracle works. And then on a Friday, I failed on stop eating chocolate. It's it's change can be really, really quick, but it's just about being precise with that intervention. And that's why I work on such a reductionist approach, where I study so hard to learn the structure behind behavior, because it gives me a better understanding of how that person has learned to be that way and what I need to do to deliver that perfect intervention to help them change quickly. So that's the approach that I do with everybody. But when someone's walking across the road from their car to me, and I see them walking with a restricted left side, and they sit down, and I've studied them as they've walked over, and I start giggling to myself because I know they've come in to relieve the emotion from a bad car accident. And they sit down, and I'll say, before we get started, I just want to tell you something. I'm psychic. Now they look at me like I'm mad. Actually, I'm not psychic. Blue Fairy, the fairy on the mantelpiece, she's psychic, and she's telling me what happened in your accident. And the guy's looking at me like I'm mad. I know you want to get up and walk off, but before you get up and walk off, just bear with me. The car came at you from front right, didn't it? And just before it hit the front right quarter of your car, you turned sharply away from that car to the left, but were restrained from the seatbelt. Would that be right? How did you know that? Because I'm psychic. Well, I'm not. Blue Fairy on the mantelpiece psychic, and she's reading your mind and she's telling me. And he's looking at me like I'm cuckoo. Basically, I've completely nailed it. I then explained that I'm not psychic. What I noticed was by his movement as he's walking across the car park, his memory trace is now firing with the accident, or moving across the road. His memory trace is firing with the accident, so it's firing in his brain, his spinal cord, his peripheral nervous system, and he's holding on to that memory in his body. He's embodied that because of the memory trace, he's embodied the experience. I know that we move directly away from a threat. So if his left side is inhibited, he's tried to move tightly to the left, which has added tension on the left side. Not only that, because of the way the seatbelt's there, it would have restrained him on his right side, therefore mean he's pulling more to the left. He's holding on to the memory of it. I got him to close his eyes. And what happens when you think of that memory now? Knowing that a memory trace will have a start point, content, and an end point, that end point will always be, I've noticed, the point of most significant emotion. The memory trace stopped, and that moment of horror frozen, where the car came in front, right, he turned sharply to the left, and that point of, oh my God, where he stuck frozen and helpless, frozen in time. What I did was move that memory forward. Move forward. What happened next? What happened next? What happened next? I got him to relax his body, so his body was completely relaxed. What happened next? What happened next? What happened next? Keep that going until he was quite relaxed sitting here in the room. Got him to fire that memory trace on and on and on. So we've taken it now to a new end point with a new significant emotion, resumed quite relaxed, laughing a little bit, relaxed there on the settee. Then every time the memory trace fired, it now ran to him being perfectly normal and balanced. He left able to move his left side just about normally. And all we did was move the memory trace on. That's when he told me his neurologist had said to him, they can't find anything wrong with him. He's just got to learn to live with it. And that's an example of, for my quickfire round, one of the psychosomatic people that has come to see me, where, you know, there's nothing wrong neurologically with him, therefore why has he got the problem? If the neurologist can't find anything wrong with him, it's got to be psychosomatic or another, it's got to be some reason for it, otherwise it wouldn't be happening. And in this case it was psychosomatic, and we could free him up. So that, for someone that had been told by, you know, his medical team he'd have to learn to live with it, within, I don't know, 20 minutes he had, you know, basically full movement of his left arm and left side. That's rapid change. That's not me creating magic. That's just me, with the experience that I've got, come from my particular perspective, being able to help that person. And we did have a lot of fun during the process as well, because he did think I was a little bit psychic, because I nailed the comment. I'm just reading his body language. What have I got behind me? Where is it? The Monographs by Ben Cardle. Ben is a real life, is up here on my bookshelf behind me. Brilliant book. Ben is a fantastic guy, and he is Sherlock Holmes, massive Sherlock Holmes fan. He does all the actions, the inductions, the deductions, and he can read people's body language. What I've learned from him about tattoos is unbelievable. My current girlfriend, my new girlfriend, she's got a couple of tattoos. I even told her the year she had them made. And she's like, amazed, how did you do that? It's all thanks to Ben. You can read people. Once you read people and understand their physiology, how their body's moving is representative of how they've moved, how their experience has developed, experiences plus expectations carried in the chassis of the body. You can start getting a greater understanding for that person. And then if you can understand that person, you're more able to deliver change. If you can understand that person, now you can deliver the right intervention at the right time, the right way, for the right effect. Test it, of course, and change can almost be instant. You just got to put the key in the right ignition or the right lock and turn it the right way.
So you've mentioned a couple of books already over our conversation, but if I ask you directly, have you got any books that, if there's someone out there who wants to get good at change work, that you would recommend they go out and read, or books that have been heavily influenced your work?
Oh, so many. There's so many. Almost rapid fire. If you want books that I've learned so much from in respect to change work, attitude, details, interventions, ideas, I heavily recommend The Rainbow Machine by Andrew T. Austin. Andrew Austin is definitely one of our leading peers, highly respected, a major influence in my early part of my career, and therefore has impacted upon my entire career massively. Provocative Hypnosis by Jürgen Rasmussen, highly influential in my work as well, again in respect to attitude, not just the contents of the book, but then on the technical level, I constantly study cognitive neuroscience, cognitive psychology, cognitive linguistics, physiology, nutrition, and such like. So I'd highly recommend Memory by Eysenck. Is great. Brain and Behavior by Kolb. Cognitive Psychology by Eysenck. Louder Than Words by Bergen. Everyone should have. There's so many good books out there, but too many people in change work, I believe, just stay within the change work field. Let's read Haley's book on Milton Erickson. Let's study this guy's great works. He's a great therapist. I like to go to how those therapists have learned to be the way that they are. So, for example, with Andy, yeah, he's got this fantastic book, The Rainbow Machine, which is absolutely hilarious, entertaining reading, let alone the amount of teaching tales that are within it and the attitude changes that are in it. But I like asking Andy how he's learned. Andy, what are you studying now? What are you getting a benefit? Oh, you're moving more to the identity markers and the pronoun usage there. So that leads me to works like Pennebaker and The Secret Life of Pronouns, which is an amazing book. It's quite, it's how have those people learned to be the way that they are? What are they learning? Placebo and Nocebo. There's a very badly named book, but it's an absolutely exceptional book called Cure by Jo Marchant. And she's helped me understand placebo and nocebo far more than ever before. And as hypnotherapists, as change workers, the elements of successful change work is the therapeutic relationship. You've got to be able to communicate with your clients. That does not mean the same as a positive rapport. Sometimes you don't need rapport. That might lead on to a question as well. So we've got therapeutic relationship. We've got placebo, the beliefs that they come with, the positive beliefs about change that they come with. Nocebo, the negative beliefs, and quite often removal of negative beliefs will remove that. We've got natural reversion. Basically, some shit just gets better on its own. Sometimes we can't account for that, but we should understand it takes place. We've got the magic of the work is Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And we've got the entire cognitive basis behind that. We need to emphasize all of those areas and understand the best that we can in order to be artful with the application of science. And Cure by Jo Marchant is an exceptional book in that respect. A field I'm getting a massive load of benefit from now is ethology. And I'm studying it from a canine perspective because it's more simple. And it's the origin of our behaviors. Because when we're born, we haven't got much by way of experience. What we've got is our bodies. And ethology is how our bodies guide our behavior. For example, when a pup is born, it'll automatically have the intrinsic motor pattern of rolling towards heat. If there's no heat source, it will automatically fire the intrinsic motor pattern of setting off an alarm bark. The mother, on hearing the alarm bark, will go and retrieve that pup automatically. We know they do it automatically because if you have a tape player playing a recording of a pup doing the alarm bark, it will go and retrieve the tape recorder and bring it back in with the pups. In humans, if you put something in the palm of a baby's hand, it will close and grip. Yet, if it detects hair, it will grip far stronger. And all of these are the emergence of our intrinsic motor patterns. They're the origins of our behavior, the first time we've learnt to respond to a stimulus, and then they adapt over time. So I'm getting a massive benefit from studying ethology, the very origins of our behavior, the initial sensitizing events, if you will, how we've initially learnt to behave in that way, right from the bare bones. So yeah, I just urge people to study as much as they can and around the subject, because the serendipity that comes from reading around the subject, I found an absolute goldmine.
Gary, if people are listening to the podcast and are keen to hear more from you, where should they go? How should they get in touch?
I've got my website, garyturner.co.uk, and I'm very active on Facebook. I like Facebook because it tests my work and tests my knowledge, and we have a good laugh as well, and it leads me to meet lots of interesting people. So I'd love to meet you. Find me on Facebook, join me up on Facebook. I'm Gary Smiler Turner. I'm on Howard's Facebook, of course, as well. So you can find me and link to me through Howard, and come and join the conversation, come and join the chat. I do have, I'm up to my 5,000 friends limit, but my Facebook page is public. So feel free to come and join in, and feel free to follow me as well on there. But yeah, garyturner.co.uk and Facebook, they're my two main ways of getting hold of me. And I'd love to chat further with people.
Fantastic. Well, as promised, we will put, obviously, on the Rapid Change Works site all the links and all the book recommendations. All the book recommendations. It's going to be a long page. But no, that's absolutely fantastic. Gary, before I finish up, the last question that I often finish with is this. When we talked about the idea of doing the podcast and interviewing today about rapid change, is there anything that came to mind that you thought would be useful to share with people that I haven't asked directly?
I just think that just develop the attitude of continuing to question and develop. I'm lucky because of my sports career. I've had some very good mentors that have taught me to evaluate what I've done. So after every hypnotherapy session, and I do 2-hour sessions because I find them far more beneficial for my client, and they end up needing a lot less sessions. Gives me a chance to test the work big time. And so I know that the change has taken place when they leave the session. After each session, I'll go out and get some air. I'll mobilize myself. I'll hook the huskies up. I've got a couple of huskies. I'll hook the huskies up, and even though I've got half hour between sessions, I'll go out with them and walk around the block with them. As I go out and walk around the block with them, what I'm doing is I'm reflecting back on the session that I've had and thinking, with the power of retrospect, what would I have done differently? After this podcast, I'm going to take the dogs for a little walk around the block. It's a nice sunny day out there. I'll take them out there around the field behind me and get some air. And I'm thinking, if I did that podcast again, what would I do differently? What advice would I give differently? What would I do different in the future? And in doing that, it's constantly developing. And as I listen back to this, I know that I've gibbered on quite too much at times, and I'll be face palming at that. You get those moments of, oh, for God's sake, why did I miss that? But then you think, right, okay, let it go. What are you going to do differently about it in the future? So in other words, just continually question, continue develop, continue learn. And as Ray Cronai says, look forward to being wrong. It's when you learn the most. So, hey, smile and move forward. What's it I teach my clients? Be happy with where you are right now because you're moving to be better.
That's great.
I teach all my clients that. It's a secret to happiness, I feel. Be happy with where you are right now because that's all you've got. Hey, but it's okay because you're moving to be better. There's the thought for people as well.
Lovely. Gary Turner, thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing your thoughts and ideas and general energy, charisma and wisdom. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope everyone's enjoyed it as much as I have.
Fantastic. Howard, you're an absolute legend, and thank you so much for your podcast series. Now it's formed part of my weekly CPD. I like hearing other people's views. They're entertaining, there's knowledge base, and if people haven't listened to the other podcasts, there's already a gold mine of information there. And for me now, it's essential CPD. Thank you. Continuing professional development for those who don't know what CPD is. If you don't know what CPD is, you damn well should. But yeah, now it's essential CPD for me. So thank you so much for taking the time yourself to putting these on and helping me with my learning. It's much appreciated.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, why not share it with anyone you think might be interested? And even head over to iTunes to give us a glowing review. You'll find more about what's coming up on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Rapid Change Works. And of course, you'll find all the links related to this episode, plus those free 5 steps to getting your suggestions to sizzle over at rapidchange.works.